This episode of the CanesInSight podcast is brought to you by our friends at Salas, and Cox, a boutique law firm focusing on securities regulatory matters, broker-dealer and investment advisor regulation, white-collar criminal defense, complex commercial litigation, and securities arbitration and litigation. The firm aggressively represents clients throughout the nation. Contact them now at 561-989-9080 or visit them online at salalaw.com. All right, Canes fans, I am joined now on the Canes Insight podcast, as we are every week on a Monday, recapping the baseball series here with Javi Salas, former Hurricanes pitcher, and of course, this segment brought to you by Salas, and Cox. Javi, how you doing today?
I'm good, Pete. Good to be back, man. A lot of sports this weekend, bro. Got to absorb a whole lot of stuff, man. March Madness, college baseball, a lot of good stuff out there, man.
And obviously, from the Canes' perspective, wasn't the best weekend out there up in South Bend, which earlier in the week, last week, when we were talking about it, there was question if this series, would even happen with the weather, right? So obviously, team goes up there in that cold atmosphere, and first couple games, not too pretty, lose, fall behind like big time on Sunday yesterday, but end up battling back to salvage a game up there. As a whole, what were your biggest takeaways this weekend?
Yeah, look, we talked about it going into the week when we spoke last week about what this would look like. And, going into the series, obviously, you look at Notre Dame, they were always 0-6 in conference. You know, from the outside looking in, it looked like, was a series that the Canes could definitely handle. Obviously, weather definitely played a factor, but look, you never want to lose a series, especially in conference, especially to a team that was 0-6. But it is the ACC, man. Look, it's a loaded conference. You look up and down the conference, and it's a lot of parity, especially on the coastal side. Miami's right in the mix. You saw a bunch of sweeps this weekend. Obviously, the big one headlined by Clemson sweeping Florida State. We're going to have that Clemson ball club here in Coral Gables this weekend. So, look, from an outsider's perspective, obviously, losing 2 or 3 is not the way you want to go into any series, especially in conference. But look, man, that Sunday game was huge. I know we're in a couple group chats and we're chatting about it last night. That it was a massive win and one of those things that you definitely don't want to understate. In the ACC, you definitely never want to get swept. That's one of those. It's a conference thing, and any game is super important, especially on the road. So I think the team showed a lot of gall yesterday, coming back from that 7-1 deficit, winning in extras, and not the weekend you wanted, but definitely a nice way to end it on Sunday with a come from behind win.
And those bats, I mean, it really took them a while to get going, both Friday and Saturday, right? Scoring 2 runs, scored early on Friday night, but then didn't get another one until late there. I mean, what was the biggest thing that you saw? Was that Notre Dame pitching just really tough to hit this weekend? Were the guys off because it's traveling on the road, ACC series, right? So, I mean, from your synopsis, what did you see out of the lineup?
Yeah, look, and it's kind of been the theme of what D Money and I have talked about. This team sort of lives and dies with a long ball. Friday and Saturday, just those opportunities didn't materialize. And look, it's definitely the wind and the weather definitely played a factor. We're talking about 30-degree weather. The wind was blowing. I mean, I couldn't really tell. It looked like it was blowing sideways in South Bend. So, I mean, look, Notre Dame did a really nice job of controlling Blake Sear, Daniel Cavey, and Jason Torres on Friday and Saturday. On Sunday, they did get their licks in. Those guys, there was no long balls, but we saw Daniel Cavey with 3 RBIs. Jason Torres had 2 RBIs on Sunday. So what we've talked about has sort of shown itself, right? Like teams are going to focus in on Blake Sear. They're not going to let him get his free swings. Daniel Cavey is the focus of every scouting report. We keep harping in on that, but that's just the reality of the situation. He's hitting 400, got 9 home runs. Like he's all world talent. So teams are just not going to let him beat them. And then Jason Torres is obviously the guy who's batting 5th behind Dorian Gonzalez, who he's another one that's circled on scouting reports, and teams are just really honing in on those 3 guys. And right now, this Miami ball club, like I said, they just live and die with a long ball. And this weekend, no long balls, and it was tough for them to manufacture some runs, especially on Friday and Saturday.
Let's talk about Gage Zio a little bit, Javi, because obviously goes out last week against Carolina, gets the resounding win there in game 1 as the starting pitcher. This week started out pretty well, 4 scoreless innings there to start the game. not much run support as we already spoke about, but it seems like he's starting to settle in a little bit as this season wears on.
Yeah, and look, I think I was really encouraged what I saw to Gage last week against Carolina. Obviously, a complete game, shortened complete game, 7 innings, but he rolls that into this week. He had really 4 solid innings. I think he went 9 up, 9 down the first 3. And look, it's to be expected, man. Guys are going to get their licks, and Notre Dame got some runs there, and unfortunately Miami couldn't match. But look, I think from an like I said, what you need on Friday night is a guy who can go deep into the ball game, a guy who can give you a chance. I think Gage certainly did do that. You're scoring 2 runs. You're not going to win a whole lot of ball games in any conference for that matter. So, look, I think from a pitching perspective, we definitely saw a lot of good on Friday and Saturday, and the roles have sort of reversed, especially this weekend. We're used to seeing this offense put up a ton of runs. We didn't do that Friday and Saturday. The pitching held up. It just another mismatch, and this is to be expected with a young ball club. There's just going to be weekends where stuff doesn't click at the right time, and we've seen games like the Sunday game where we put up 10 runs and lose. On the flip side, we give up 5 and 6 on Friday and Saturday, and we just couldn't scratch across any runs. So from a pitching perspective, I was definitely encouraged with Gage's outing on Friday. Obviously, he's definitely not going to be super happy with it, taking a loss on the road, but he kept us in the ball game. There was a chance. We just didn't scratch across any runs.
Let's talk about Sunday a little bit. Obviously, team goes down big early, 7-1, right in the third inning of that game. And you're thinking, man, this team's going to get swept against Notre Dame on the road. Really not what you're looking for, already having dropped the first 2. And we've seen it time and time again already early in the season with this team. They really just keep things going, and they aren't going to lay down. They're going to keep swinging away.
Yeah, look, Pete, and I mentioned at the opener how important it is to not get swept in conference. I think that's when you look at your tournament resume, you look back at 500 probably gets you into the tournament pretty comfortably in the ACC, just given how strong the conference is. So we've seen 2 series wins. You go into that Sunday game, you obviously have lost a series, and for all intents and purposes, in that 5th inning, you're looking at a 7-1 deficit. I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be a tough plane ride back. But time and time again, this team proves that there is just a lot more than than what shows on the surface. If you're Coach Artiaga, Coach Fenster, Coach Gutierrez, you got to be really pleased with the effort and the character of that ball club. Look, man, 7-1 sucks. Like when you're getting beat down like that, it was cold. You're on the road. You got a long plane ride back home after the game. Like there's a whole lot of thoughts going through that dugout, and the fact that they can sort of rally and come back from that. And it wasn't just come back. It's come back, take the lead, give the lead away again in the bottom of the 8th inning, and come back and win an extra inning. So I think if you're Coach Artiaga, yes, you lost a series. Yes, there's a lot to work on. But damn, you're pretty happy that you were able to scratch one of those wins across, because look, man, getting swept stinks. The plane ride stinks. Monday with no practice stinks. You're just thinking about it. So winning on Sunday, build a little bit of momentum. Looking forward to that Tuesday, and then that ACC series Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in Coral Gables.
All right, we'll wrap it up with this segment that we always do here as we recap these series and then look ahead to the midweek game this week. But the good, the bad, and the ugly from this weekend up there in South Bend. We'll start here with the good, Javi.
Yeah, look, obviously the good, Pete, I think coming back on Sunday, I know we just talked about it, but that's so important, man. I think, you really want to know what you have in this ball club, and being on the road certainly will test some of that. It's the first time they've gone on a true road trip this year. Granted, it was cold. The weather didn't really help us a whole lot. But look, man, it's the nature of the beast, man. You're in the ACC. You're going to have some of these series. I remember, we played in Boston College in the snow, Maryland in the snow. So it's definitely a tough environment when you're not used to it. But no excuses. This ball club, understood what the task at hand. They lost a series, but it was I think a real big positive winning that game on Sunday in the fashion that they did. The bad, I definitely say, going cold, the bats going cold on Friday and Saturday was something that was a little bit concerning to me. The Notre Dame was not necessarily known for their pitching. I was talking to some folks, 2 career outings basically on Friday and Saturday for starting pitching, guys that went deeper than into games than they ever had in their previous career outing. So I mean, when you look at it from that perspective, it was probably one of those series that Miami thought they could score some runs, get out ahead. It was a team that was down in the conference. Notre Dame was 0-6 coming into the series. So I definitely look at the bad as what transpired on Friday and Saturday from the bats perspective. And from the ugly perspective, I just think, we keep on searching for this team to find its identity. And, we know they can play from behind. We know what they are. We know that they're tough. I really want to see them sort of, grab the bull by the horns and sort of chart the course for the season. I keep on talking about, it's a young ball club, yes, but, now, we're over 20 games into the season. You kind of know what you got out of this team. I'd like for the next week, the next 2 weeks, let's see what this Hurricane Ball Club is all about. You can only lean on youth and keep talking about development, and obviously development's not linear. These guys, they are young. There's a lot to be learned, but I think this will set a good course for us in the sense that it was a tough weekend. They battled the elements, a desperate team in Notre Dame that really came out swinging. So let's see what we got. Look at this week. This week is not going to be an easy week. We got FIU on the road on Tuesday night, and then we got a really hot Clemson team. And I haven't seen the top 25 rankings, Pete, but this is a Clemson team that just swept Florida State that was undefeated at home. So I fully expect them. They're ranked number 4 going into the weekend. They're probably going to sneak up there, maybe top 3, top 2, and I know they're number 1 in the RPI. So Lord knows they might come into Coral Gables as the number 1 ranked team in the country. So should be a really, really exciting weekend down in Coral Gables.
And you mentioned the FIU game, of course, winning the game last week against FIU 4-3. How important is that momentum continuing to build for them in those midweek games?
Yeah, man. Look, the midweek game is such a tricky spot for the Canes, right? Because we haven't really solidified a 4th starter. We haven't seen anybody really step up and grab that role and sort of run with it. One thing I did see last week against FIU was Ashton Crowther looked really, really good. Pitched 5 innings in relief. Drew Dwyer came and pitched the first inning coming back from injury. Ashton Crowther settled the game down, had a really good outing. I fully expect him to start tomorrow night for the Canes. That's just not that I know anything, but just from what I saw, I think that it's definitely his role now from going forward. And look, midweek is it's a way to build momentum, and that FIU game was tough, man, because it's a crosstown rival. A lot of guys that know each other. FIU I thought played really well. Miami executed perfectly in that 9th inning with a Dorian Gonzalez, suicide squeeze bunt to score a run. So I would like for them to build that momentum again, especially going into a tough Clemson weekend. It should be fun, man. I know that game at FIU will draw a nice crowd, probably one of their bigger crowds of the year. So, let's get some Canes fans out there. Let's take over FIU baseball stadium and build some momentum going into the weekend.
All right, Javi Salas doing a great job as always here on the Canes Insight podcast, recapping Miami's series against Notre Dame and looking ahead here to the week in front of us. Canes now sitting at 13-10 overall, 5-4 in the ACC. So we've said it the last couple of weeks, Jav, team needs to really get hot and go on a streak here, right, where they win a stretch of games in a row and get that win-loss record as much over 500 as possible and keep themselves kind of in the thick of things here, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I keep saying, like, this conference, it's been very good in the past. This year might be one of those years where it is exceptional. We're seeing teams that, Duke went on the road this weekend, lost 2-3 to NC State. Duke was a top 10 team. Florida State, top 15 team. They go on the road at Clemson, get swept. There's so much parity across the conference. Virginia swept this weekend. North Carolina swept. So it's like you go up and down, and Miami's faced 2 really tough opponents in Virginia and North Carolina. They got a really tough one in Clemson this weekend. So, like, you want to stay in the meat of that race, Pete. You mentioned it. You want to stay above 500. I fully expect that 500 easily gets you into the tournament just because the conference is going to be so strong. We're going to see Miami's RPI continue to creep up. It's at 70 this morning. So the more and more, we play these tough games, like you mentioned, you got to get on a hot streak, though. We got to win a couple games in a row, build some momentum. It starts with a midweek going into Clemson. So I'm excited for this week, Pete. 4 great baseball games in Coral Gables. You can't ask for more than that.
See you at the light. Javi, thank you so much for your time today. And again, thank you to Sala, Astorita, and Cox, as always, for bringing you guys this segment.